Yasmina traced the familiar path of the comet across her star chart, the faint glow of the cellar's single candle flickering on the parchment. The cellar was her world, a damp, cramped space filled with the musty scent of old paper and her father's disapproval. Every night she climbed the rickety stool to peer through a small barred window high in the wall. It was her only glimpse of the outside world, a sliver of sky where she tracked the celestial bodies, charting their movements with meticulous care. She knew more about the stars than anyone in the city, perhaps even the entire kingdom, but her knowledge was a prisoner, just like her. 17 years she had lived, and 17 years she had been hidden away, a shameful secret her father kept locked in the dark. Jafar, her father, believed girls brought misfortune. He already had 5 daughters, and when Yasmina, the 6th, was born, he decided she would not be. To the world, she simply did not exist. He kept her confined to the cellar, using her talent for his own gain. He would take the star charts she painstakingly created, present them as his own work, and receive praise and payment for her brilliance. Yasmina received only scraps of food and the sting of his harsh words. Meanwhile, in the grand palace that glittered under the desert sun, Sultan Karim paced his library, his mind restless. He was a man of insatiable curiosity, a ruler who valued knowledge above all else. He collected rare books and sought out scholars, believing ignorance to be the greatest enemy. He had heard whispers of a particularly skilled astrologer named Jafar, a man who supposedly possessed an uncanny ability to predict celestial events. Intrigued, Karim decided to investigate. Disguising himself in simple robes, he ventured into the city, accompanied only by his loyal vizier, who also donned commoner's clothes. They navigated the winding alleyways until they reached Jafar's humble dwelling, a small, unassuming house with a single flickering lamp in the window. Karim knocked on the weathered wooden door, his heart filled with a scholar's anticipation. Jafar, a thin, wiry man with a sour expression, opened the door a crack, peering suspiciously at the visitors. "I am looking for Jafar the astrologer," Karim said, his voice altered to match his disguise. "I am he," Jafar replied gruffly. "What do you want?" "I have heard of your skill in charting the heavens," Karim said. "I require a celestial map, a detailed guide to the stars." Jafar's eyes narrowed, a flicker of greed lighting them. "Such a map requires time and effort," he said. "It will be costly." Karim nodded, unconcerned by the price. "Knowledge is worth any price," he replied. "Lead the way." Jafar opened the door wider, allowing Karim and his vizier to enter the dimly lit house. The air inside was thick with the same musty smell that permeated Yasmina's cellar. Unseen in the darkness below, Yasmina listened to the voices above, her heart quickening with a sliver of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this stranger might be her chance to escape the darkness that had held her captive for so long. Jafar led Karim and his vizier into a small, cluttered room. Dust motes danced. In the dim light of a single oil lamp, parchments covered every surface, stacked haphazardly on tables and shelves. Jafar gestured towards a rough wooden table in the center of the room. "Please, be seated," he said, his voice still gruff. Karim sat down, his vizier standing silently behind him. Jafar rummaged through a pile of parchments, finally producing a large roll. He unfurled it on the table, smoothing it out with his hands. The map was crudely drawn, the stars represented by uneven dots, and the constellations depicted with shaky lines. Karim examined it closely, his brow furrowing. It was not the work of a master astrologer, as he had expected. It was amateurish, almost childish. "This is the map you spoke of?" Karim asked, his voice laced with disappointment. Jafar puffed up his chest, feigning pride. "Indeed," he said, "it shows the path of the celestial bodies, the secrets of the heavens." As Jafar spoke, A small, tightly rolled piece of parchment slipped from the folds of the larger map and landed near Karim's hand. He glanced at Jafar, who seemed oblivious to the fallen scroll. Karim discreetly picked it up and unrolled it. The script was neat and precise, a stark contrast to the clumsy lines of the celestial map. It detailed the trajectory of a comet, its path, calculated with remarkable accuracy. Beneath the calculations, a few desperate words were written. "Please help me, I am trapped." Karim's heart skipped a beat. He reread the note, his mind racing. Who had written it? And what did they mean by trapped? He glanced at Jafar, who was still boasting about the merits of his crude map. A suspicion began to form in Karim's mind. Could this man be taking credit for someone else's work? He looked again at the small scroll, his eyes drawn to the precise calculations. They were far beyond the capabilities of the man before him. This was the work of a true scholar, a brilliant mind hidden in the shadows. Karim felt a surge of determination. He would uncover the truth no matter the cost. He would find the author of this note and free them from their prison. He carefully rolled the small parchment and tucked it into his sleeve, his expression unreadable. This map, it is interesting, Karim said slowly, his eyes meeting Jafar's. But I require further proof of your skill. Can you predict the next celestial event? Something unique? Jafar hesitated, his eyes flickering nervously. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Karim watched him, his gaze unwavering. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the true astrologer was not the man standing before him, but someone else, someone hidden away, waiting to be discovered. Karim returned to the palace, the small parchment tucked safely within his robes. He could not shake the image of the crude celestial map and the desperate plea hidden within its folds. The contrast between the two was stark, a testament to both brilliance and suffering. He reread the note, marveling at the precise calculations of the comet's trajectory. Who was this hidden scholar, trapped in the clutches of the charlatan Jafar? He felt a growing sense of responsibility, a need to protect this unknown mind. He summoned his vizier, a trusted advisor who had accompanied him on his visit to Jafar. "I believe we have been deceived," Karim said, showing him the small scroll. "The true astrologer is not Jafar, but someone else, someone he is keeping hidden." The vizier examined the scroll, his eyes widening in surprise. "Indeed, your majesty," he said, "these calculations are remarkable. But who could this be? I intend to find out," Karim replied, his voice firm. "We will continue to pay Jafar for his work, but each payment will contain a message for the true astrologer. We will use the same method, a small scroll hidden within the larger payment." The vizier nodded. "A clever plan, your majesty. But what message shall we send?" Karim thought for a moment. "Tell them we know of their plight, that we believe in their skill, and that we wish to help." And so began a clandestine exchange. Karim would send a payment to Jafar, a pouch of coins containing a small scroll with a carefully worded message. Jafar, blinded by greed, would accept the payment without a second thought, unaware of the secret communication taking place beneath his nose. Yasmina, in her cellar prison, would eagerly await the payments, her heart pounding with hope each time. She would unravel the small scrolls, her fingers trembling, and read the words of encouragement from her unknown benefactor. Then, using the same method, she would reply, slipping her own scrolls into the next batch of star charts she prepared for her father to deliver. Her responses were filled with astronomical insights, observations of the night sky that only a dedicated scholar could make. She described the movements of planets, the phases of the moon, the dance of distant stars. Karim would read these responses with growing admiration. He was captivated by her intellect, her passion for the heavens, her resilience in the face of adversity. He learned of her long confinement, her yearning for the outside world, her frustration at having her work stolen. With each exchange, his desire to free her grew stronger. Their communication continued for weeks, a secret bond forming between the Sultan and the hidden scholar. They discussed the mysteries of the universe, sharing their knowledge and their wonder. Through these messages, Karim began to see Yasmina not just as a brilliant mind, but as a person, a young woman with dreams and aspirations, trapped in a cage of her father's making. He knew he had to do more than just exchange messages. He had to find a way to bring her out of the darkness and into the light. Karim, once again disguised as a commoner, returned to Jafar's house. He carried a pouch of coins, ostensibly for further consultation on the celestial map. His true purpose, however, was to glean more information about the hidden scholar. He found Jafar in the same cluttered room, surrounded by parchments. "I have been studying your map," Karim began, his voice carefully neutral, "and I find myself with a particular question." He fabricated a complex query about the alignment of certain stars, a question he knew required advanced astronomical knowledge to answer. Jafar, as expected, fumbled, unable to provide a coherent response. I need to consult my notes," Jafar stammered, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He shuffled towards a closed door at the back of the room. "One moment," he muttered, before disappearing behind it. Karim exchanged a quick glance. With his vizier, this was their chance. As quietly as possible, they followed Jafar, stopping just short of the door. They could hear Jafar's muffled voice, followed by a young woman's soft reply. "The alignment he speaks of," Yasmina's voice said, clear and precise, "occurs only once every 72 years. The next occurrence will be—" She paused, then continued with a series of complex calculations. Karim listened, awestruck. This was the voice of the hidden scholar, the brilliant mind trapped within these walls. He peeked through a crack in the door. He saw Yasmina, a young woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes, hunched over a table covered in star charts. She spoke with a quiet authority, her fingers tracing the paths of celestial bodies. Jafar stood over her, his face contorted in a sneer. "Faster!" he snapped. "The fool upstairs is waiting." Yasmina flinched but continued her calculations, her voice unwavering. When she finished, Jafar snatched the parchment from her hand, not even acknowledging her work. He gave her a rough shove, sending her stumbling back against the wall. "Back to your work," he growled, "and don't even think about—" His voice trailed off as he noticed Karim and the vizier standing in the doorway. Jafar's face paled. "What are you doing here?" he sputtered, his voice laced with panic. Karim stepped into the room, his eyes fixed on Yasmina. She stood silently, her gaze lowered, her body trembling slightly. He saw the fear in her eyes, the resignation in her posture. He saw the brilliance that Jafar sought to exploit, the spirit he sought to crush. "I merely wanted to see the source of such remarkable knowledge," Karim said, his voice calm but firm. He looked at Jafar, his gaze hardening. "It seems I have found it." He gestured towards Yasmina. "This young woman is the true astrologer, is she not?" Jafar opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He could only stare at Karim, his face a mask of fear and anger. Karim's gaze shifted back to Yasmina. He saw a flicker of hope in her eyes, a spark of defiance that had not been extinguished by years of confinement. In that moment, Karim's resolve hardened. He would free this young woman no matter the cost. He would give her the chance to shine, to share her gifts with the world. He would protect her from the darkness that had held her captive for so long. Karim returned to Jafar's house a third time, his disguise more elaborate, his purpose clear. He carried a heavy pouch, its weight not from coins, but from carefully chosen jewels. He found Jafar alone, his usual sour expression replaced by a flicker of anticipation. "I have come to make you an offer," Karim said, his voice low and serious. He placed the pouch on the table between them. "I wish to purchase the freedom of the young woman who assists you, the true astrologer." Jafar's eyes widened, greed battling with suspicion. "What young woman?" he blustered. "I work alone." Karim did not flinch. "Do not insult my intelligence, Jafar," he said, his voice hardening. "I know she exists. I've heard her voice, seen her work. I know her brilliance is the source of your supposed skill." Jafar's face darkened. "She is nothing but a servant," he spat. "A useless girl." "She is a scholar, a gifted astronomer," Karim countered, "and I will not stand by while you exploit her talent and keep her confined. Name your price." Jafar hesitated, weighing his greed against his fear. The jewels on the table glittered enticingly. He licked his lips, his mind racing. "She is not for sale," he finally said, his voice tight. "She is cursed. She brings misfortune." Karim's patience was wearing thin. "Enough with your lies, Jafar," he said, his voice rising. "I will not be deterred. I will have her freedom one way or another." A cruel smile spread across Jafar's face. "You threaten me, Sultan," he hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "Perhaps you forget certain things about your own past." Karim froze, his blood running cold. How did this man know? He felt a wave of nausea, a sudden, sharp fear gripping his heart. "I know of your mother," Jafar continued, his voice a venomous whisper. "I know of the child she bore in secret, the child she was forced to give away, the child who, by some twist of fate, became the Sultan." Karim's breath caught in his throat. This was a secret he had guarded his entire life, a painful chapter he had tried to erase from his memory. How could Jafar know? And what did he intend to do with this knowledge? "If you interfere with me," Jafar said, his eyes gleaming with triumph, "if you try to take the girl, I will reveal your secret to the world. I will expose your shame, and you will lose everything." Karim stood frozen, caught in a web of fear and desperation. He had come to free Yasmina, but now he found himself trapped, his own past threatening to destroy his present. He looked at the jewels on the table, then at the closed door behind which Yasmina remained hidden. He had a choice to make. Protect his secret, or protect the young woman who had captured his heart and mind. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. Karim returned to the palace, the weight of Jafar's threat pressing heavily upon him. The astrologer's words echoed in his mind, a venomous reminder of a past he had tried to bury. The secret of his birth, a truth known only to a few, was now a weapon in the hands of a greedy, unscrupulous man. He paced the length of his private chamber, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He longed to free Yasmina, to bring her out of the darkness and into the light, but the price of her freedom might be his own ruin. He thought of his mother, the woman who had borne him in secret, the woman he had never known. He thought of the shame and the hardship she must have endured. He thought of the potential scandal, the whispers and accusations that would follow if Jafar revealed the truth. His reputation, carefully cultivated over years of just and wise rule, could be shattered in an instant. His family, his advisors, his entire kingdom would be thrown into turmoil. He summoned his vizier, his most trusted advisor, the man who had stood by his side through thick and thin. He recounted his conversation with Jafar, the blackmail, the threat that hung over him like a dark cloud. The vizier listened patiently, his expression grave. When Karim finished, he remained silent for a moment, considering the situation. "This is a delicate matter, Your Majesty," he finally said, his voice low and measured. "Jafar holds a dangerous weapon, We must tread carefully. But I cannot abandon Yasmina, Karim said, his voice filled with anguish. I cannot leave her in the clutches of that man. I understand your concern, Your Majesty, the vizier replied, but we must find a solution that protects both Yasmina and your reputation. A direct confrontation with Jafar would be disastrous. What then do you propose? Karim asked, his voice laced with frustration. We must find a way to discredit Jafar, the vizier said. We must expose his lies, his deceit, his true nature. If we can prove him to be untrustworthy, his threats will hold no weight. Karim considered this, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. But how? He asked. He is cunning and careful. He leaves no trace of his wrongdoing. We will find a way, Your Majesty, the vizier assured him. We will investigate his past, his dealings, his associations. We will uncover the truth, no matter how deeply buried it may be. Karim nodded, a renewed sense of determination filling him. He would not succumb to Jafar's blackmail. He would not allow fear to paralyze him. He would find a way to protect Yasmina and preserve his own honor. He would fight for justice, for truth, for the young woman trapped in the darkness, waiting for the dawn to break. Jafar, sensing the Sultan's vulnerability, grew bolder. He no longer hid his contempt, his words laced with a veiled threat that hung heavy in the air. He demanded more money, claiming his astronomical charts required increasingly rare and expensive materials. He insisted on being granted access to the royal library, a privilege usually reserved for scholars of the highest regard. He even requested a position at court, a position that would give him proximity to the Sultan and further solidify his power. Karim, bound by the secret Jafar held, reluctantly agreed to these demands. Each concession felt like a betrayal, a chipping away at his own integrity. He felt a growing sense of helplessness, trapped in a web of his own making. He knew he was being manipulated, but he saw no way out. The risk of exposure was too great, the potential consequences too devastating. Meanwhile, in the cellar, Yasmina's hope began to fade. The messages from her unknown benefactor had stopped. She had poured her heart and soul into her responses, sharing her knowledge, her dreams, her fears. She had believed for a brief moment that rescue was within reach. But now, silence. The silence of the cellar seemed to deepen, the darkness to thicken. Had her plea for help been in vain? Had her unknown friend abandoned her? Her father's cruelty intensified. He sensed her dwindling hope, her growing despair, and it seemed to fuel his anger. He demanded more charts, more calculations, pushing her to the limits of her endurance. He rationed her food, leaving her weak and hungry. He taunted her with stories of the outside world, the sun, the stars, the life she would never know. You will rot in this cellar, he would sneer. You are nothing, a cursed girl, a burden. No one will ever want you. Yasmina tried to ignore his words, to focus on the stars, the only solace she had ever known. But the darkness was closing in, threatening to engulf her completely. She felt like a flickering candle, about to be extinguished by the suffocating weight of her despair. She longed for the sun, for the open sky, for the freedom she had only glimpsed through the small barred window. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, she began to fear that her dreams would never come true. She was trapped, forgotten, lost in the darkness, her light slowly fading away. The whispers started subtly, like the rustle of dry leaves in the desert wind. They swirled through the palace corridors, carried on the breath of courtiers and servants. The Sultan's unusual interest in Jafar, a lowly astrologer, had become a topic of quiet speculation. Why would a ruler, renowned for his wisdom and his patronage of true scholars, lavish such attention on a man of questionable skill? The gifts, the access to the royal library, the whispered consultations, it all seemed uncharacteristic. The rumors grew, fueled by Jafar's own arrogance. He boasted of his influence over the Sultan, hinting at a special relationship that went beyond mere patronage. He let it be known that he held the Sultan's ear, that his advice was sought on matters of state, that his pronouncements carried significant weight. He flaunted his newfound wealth, dressing in fine silks and adorning himself with jewels. He held court in the city's taverns, regaling his listeners with tales of his close connection to the Sultan. Karim, aware of the growing whispers, felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. He knew the rumors were damaging his reputation, eroding the trust he had carefully built over the years. He had tried to be discreet, to keep his dealings with Jafar hidden from prying eyes. But the astrologer's arrogance and his own desperation to protect Yasmina had made him careless. He had underestimated Jafar's cunning, his willingness to exploit any advantage, no matter how small. The vizier, his face etched with concern, confirmed Karim's fears. "The rumors are spreading, Your Majesty," he said, his voice low and urgent. "They are beginning to affect your standing with the court, with the people. We must act quickly." Karim knew the vizier was right. He could no longer afford to be passive. He had to find a way to silence Jafar, to expose his lies and his deceit before the whispers turned into accusations, before the scandal broke and consumed him entirely. He realized he was trapped between two dangers. On one side was Jafar, holding the secret of his birth, a weapon that could destroy him. On the other side was the growing public suspicion, the erosion of his authority, the potential for unrest and rebellion. He felt like a tightrope walker, balancing precariously between two abysses, each threatening to swallow him whole. He knew he could not continue to appease Jafar. Each concession only emboldened the astrologer, fueling his greed and his arrogance. He had to find a way to turn the tables, to seize control of the situation before it spiraled completely out of his grasp. He had to find a way to expose Jafar's true nature, to reveal the charlatan beneath the mask, to free Yasmina and in doing so, free himself. The task seemed daunting, almost impossible, but he knew he had no choice. His future, his kingdom, his very life depended on it. Karim, burdened by Jafar's blackmail and the growing rumors, retreated to the solitude of his observatory. The vastness of the night sky, once a source of solace and wonder, now reflected the turmoil within him. He could no longer look at the stars without thinking of Yasmina, trapped in her cellar prison, her brilliance stifled, her spirit slowly breaking. He had to find a way to free her, but Jafar's threat hung over him like a sword of Damocles. He began to scrutinize the star charts Jafar had provided, searching for a flaw, a weakness, anything that could expose the astrologer's deceit. He spread the charts across a large table, his fingers tracing the lines and symbols, his mind searching for inconsistencies. At first, he found nothing. The charts, while crude, seemed internally consistent. But as he delved deeper, comparing them to his own astronomical knowledge and the meticulous records kept by the palace astronomers, he began to notice subtle discrepancies. The positions of certain stars were slightly off, the trajectories of planets subtly altered. The errors were small, almost insignificant, but they were there like whispers in the darkness. He realized that Jafar's charts were not just inaccurate, they were deliberately falsified. But why? What purpose could such minor alterations serve? He summoned Omar, the head of the royal caravan guard, a man of unwavering loyalty and keen observation. Omar, a weathered veteran of countless desert expeditions, knew the stars as intimately as any sailor knew the sea. He relied on celestial navigation to guide the caravans across the vast, unforgiving desert, ensuring the safe passage of merchants and travelers. Karim showed Omar the star charts, pointing out the subtle discrepancies. "What do you make of "These, Omar?" he asked, his voice low and serious. Omar studied the charts carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These are not right, Your Majesty," he said finally, his voice troubled. "These small deviations, they could lead a caravan astray, especially during sandstorms or moonless nights." Karim's suspicion deepened. "Have you noticed any problems with the caravan routes recently?" he asked. "Any unexplained delays? Any lost caravans?" Omar nodded grimly. "There have been several incidents, Your Majesty," he replied. "Caravans vanishing without a trace, merchants reporting attacks by desert raiders. The losses have been significant." A chilling thought took root in Karim's mind. Could Jafar be deliberately sabotaging the caravan routes? Could he be using his falsified star charts to cause chaos and misfortune, then profiting from the resulting losses? The idea seemed monstrous, almost unbelievable, but it fit the pattern of Jafar's greed and his willingness to exploit any opportunity for personal gain. "Omar," Karim said, his voice low and urgent, "I need you to investigate these incidents thoroughly. I need proof that Jafar is responsible for these misfortunes." Omar bowed his head. "It shall be done, Your Majesty," he said, his voice firm. Karim looked out at the night sky, his mind racing. He had a glimmer of hope, a thread of possibility that could unravel Jafar's web of deceit. If he could prove the astrologer's manipulation of the caravan routes, he could expose him as a fraud, discredit his threats, and finally free Yasmina from her prison. The task was dangerous. The risks were high, but he knew he had to try. The fate of Yasmina, the stability of his kingdom, and his own future hung in the balance. Karim knew he needed irrefutable proof of Jafar's treachery. He needed something dramatic, something undeniable, something that would expose the astrologer's lies for all to see. And he knew who could provide it. He resumed his secret communication with Yasmina, the small scrolls hidden within the payments for Jafar's work. He described his suspicions, his growing certainty that Jafar was deliberately falsifying the star charts. He explained his theory about the caravan routes, the lost merchants, the unexplained attacks. "I need your help," he wrote. "I need you to predict a celestial event, something unique, something that only a true astronomer could foresee, something that Jafar could not possibly predict with his fabricated charts." He waited anxiously for her reply, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. Days later, the next payment arrived from Jafar. Karim quickly retrieved the small scroll hidden within. He unrolled it with trembling fingers, his eyes scanning the neat, precise script. Yasmina had not disappointed him. She described an upcoming meteor shower, a spectacular display of celestial fireworks that would illuminate the night sky. She detailed the precise date and time of the event, the trajectory of the meteors, the area of the sky where they would appear. She explained that this particular meteor shower was a rare occurrence, predictable only with advanced astronomical knowledge. "This will prove his deceit," she wrote. "He will claim it is a sign of impending doom, a celestial omen of disaster. He will use it to frighten the people, to extort more money, more power, but it is nothing to fear. It is a beautiful, harmless display, a gift from the heavens." Karim read her words with a surge of admiration and relief. This was exactly what he needed, a celestial event, predictable only by a true astronomer, an event that Jafar could not possibly foresee with his fabricated charts. He knew Jafar would exploit the meteor shower, using it to further his own selfish ends. But this time, Karim would be ready. He would use Jafar's greed and his ignorance against him. He would expose his lies and his treachery for all to see. And he would finally free Yasmina from her prison, bringing her out of the darkness and into the light where she belonged. Jafar, emboldened by his continued success in manipulating the Sultan, strutted through the city like a peacock. His pockets were heavy with gold, his fingers adorned with rings. He had tasted power, and he craved more. He saw himself as the power behind the throne, the true ruler of the kingdom, pulling the strings of the seemingly all-powerful Sultan. Then, a stroke of luck, or so he thought. A messenger arrived bearing a parchment from his hidden daughter. It contained a prediction, a detailed description of a meteor shower, unlike any seen in generations. Jafar saw not a wonder of the heavens, but an opportunity. Fear, he knew, was a powerful motivator. He burst into the Sultan's court, interrupting a session of royal advisors. He waved the parchment dramatically, his voice ringing with false urgency. "Doom approaches," he proclaimed. "The stars themselves foretell the destruction of our city. A fiery rain will descend from the heavens, consuming all in its path." The court erupted in murmurs of alarm. The advisors, normally composed and rational, exchanged worried glances. Jafar continued, his voice rising to a fever pitch. "Only I, through my deep knowledge of the celestial bodies, can avert this catastrophe. Only I can appease the angry heavens. But it will require a great sacrifice, a demonstration of our city's devotion. Riches, influence, a position of power. These are the price we must pay to avoid utter annihilation." The Sultan, seated on his throne, watched Jafar's performance with a carefully masked expression. He had anticipated this, had planned for it. He had received Yasmina's prediction, knew the meteor shower was a harmless spectacle, a celestial dance, not a harbinger of doom. But he allowed Jafar to continue, to weave his web of fear and deceit, knowing that the astrologer was digging his own grave. The city, gripped by Jafar's pronouncements, descended into panic. Merchants shuttered their shops, families barricaded their homes, priests conducted frantic rituals in the temples. The streets, normally bustling with activity, were eerily deserted. The air was thick with fear, with the anticipation of impending doom. Jafar, reveling in the chaos he had created, increased his demands. He demanded a larger share of the city's treasury, a seat on the ruling council, control over the city guard. He presented himself as the only savior, the sole protector against the fiery wrath of the heavens. The Sultan, outwardly appearing to acquiesce to Jafar's demands, secretly prepared for the meteor shower. He instructed his guards to maintain order, to reassure the citizens, to ensure that no harm came to anyone during the celestial event. He arranged for astronomers to be present, to explain the true nature of the meteor shower, to dispel the fear and superstition that Jafar had so skillfully cultivated. He knew that the meteor shower, the very event Jafar intended to use to solidify his power, would instead be his downfall. The truth, like the stars themselves, would eventually shine through the darkness, exposing the charlatan for who he truly was. The city held its breath. Jafar, draped in borrowed finery and radiating a false piety, declared a city-wide fast and vigil. He ordered the markets closed, the temples opened, and every citizen to pray for deliverance from the fiery sky he had prophesied. Fear, thick and suffocating, blanketed the streets. Mothers clutched their children, merchants counted their losses, and whispers of Jafar's power echoed in every corner. He had become, in the eyes of the terrified populace, the sole intermediary between a vengeful sky and their trembling city. Karim, observing from the quiet solitude of his palace, felt a surge of anger mingled with pity. He knew the meteor shower posed no threat. Yasmina's precise calculations, confirmed by his own astronomers, predicted a spectacular but harmless display. He had ordered his guards to remain vigilant, to reassure the populace, and to discreetly document Jafar's pronouncements. And the city's reaction. He wanted a clear record of the astrologer's manipulation, undeniable evidence of his deceit. While Jafar held court in the main square, proclaiming doom and demanding tribute, Karim met with Omar and a small group of trusted advisors. "Tonight, we expose Jafar," he stated, his voice steady and resolute. "Omar, your men will ensure the safety of the citizens. Let no one be harmed by this charlatan's fear-mongering." Omar, his face grim, nodded his understanding. "My men are ready, Your Majesty. We will maintain order and gather evidence of Jafar's lies." Karim turned to his advisors. "Once the meteor shower begins, our astronomers will explain the true nature of the event. We will dispel the fear and reveal Jafar's deception for what it is." He felt a heavy weight lift from his shoulders. The plan was in motion. He had allowed Jafar to spin his web of lies, to tighten the noose of fear around the city, but he had also laid the groundwork for the astrologer's downfall. Tonight, the truth would prevail. Tonight, Yasmina's brilliance would shine through the darkness, and Jafar's reign of fear would come to an end. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Karim climbed to the roof of his palace. He looked out at the anxious faces below, the flickering lamps in the windows, the hushed silence that had fallen over the streets. He felt a pang of guilt for the fear he had allowed to spread, but he knew it was a necessary sacrifice. Tonight, the truth would set them free. He looked up at the darkening sky, the first stars beginning to appear. He thought of Yasmina, trapped in her cellar prison, her eyes fixed on the same heavens he now observed. He imagined her tracing the path of the meteors, her heart filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Tonight, he would not only expose Jafar's lies, he would fulfill his promise to her. He would bring her out of the darkness and into the light. The first streak of light flashed across the sky, a brilliant silver thread against the deepening indigo. Then another and another, followed by a cascade of shimmering trails, like diamonds, scattered across a velvet cloth. The meteor shower had begun. The city, huddled in fear, gasped collectively. Some screamed, some prayed, some simply stared in awe at the breathtaking display. Jafar, standing in the main square, his arms outstretched as if commanding the heavens, momentarily forgot his charade. He, too, was captivated by the spectacle, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. He had expected fire and brimstone, not this dazzling, ethereal dance of light. Karim, watching from the palace roof, felt a surge of triumph. He signaled to his advisors. The palace astronomers, positioned strategically throughout the city, began to speak, their voices calm and reassuring. They explained the true nature of the meteor shower, a natural phenomenon, a harmless display of celestial debris burning up in the atmosphere. They pointed out the constellations, explained the movement of the planets, dispelled the myths and superstitions that Jafar had used to fuel the city's fear. Slowly, tentatively, the fear began to dissipate, replaced by wonder and relief. People emerged from their homes, their faces pale but curious. They looked up at the sky, not with terror, but with a newfound appreciation for its beauty and its mysteries. The whispers started, then grew louder, questions of doubt and suspicion directed at Jafar. He had promised fire and destruction, but the heavens had delivered beauty and wonder. Omar, accompanied by a contingent of royal guards, approached Jafar. The astrologer, sensing the shift in the crowd's mood, tried to regain control. "This is but a prelude," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "The true destruction is yet to come. You must still appease the heavens. You must still—" His words were drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. They had witnessed the beauty of the meteor shower, the harmless dance of light, and they realized they had been manipulated. "Liar!" someone shouted from the crowd, then another voice and another, until the accusation echoed through the square. "Charlatan! Deceiver! Thief!" Omar reached Jafar, his face grim. "You are under arrest," he said, his voice firm. "You stand accused of fraud, extortion, and endangering the welfare of the city." Jafar, his face pale and streaked with sweat, tried to protest, to deny, to bluster his way out of the situation, but his words were lost in the rising tide of anger and resentment. The crowd surged forward, their faces contorted in fury. They had been deceived, manipulated, terrified, and now they wanted retribution. The guards formed a protective circle around Jafar, pushing back the angry mob. They led him away, his head bowed, his finery now soiled and torn, his reign of fear finally brought to an end. The meteor shower continued, its shimmering trails, painting the night sky with light and wonder. But now the fear was gone, replaced by a sense of relief, a collective exhale of breath. The city, freed from Jafar's grip, could finally look up at the stars with wonder and not with dread. The truth, like the meteors themselves, had burned brightly, illuminating the darkness and revealing the charlatan for who he truly was. As the city slowly returned to its normal rhythms, the whispers about the true source of the meteor shower, prediction began to circulate. Who was the real astronomer, the hidden genius who had foreseen the celestial event that Jafar had twisted into a prophecy of doom? Karim knew the time had come to reveal Yasmina, to bring her out of the shadows and into the light. He sent Omar to Jafar's house with instructions to bring the young woman to the palace. Omar, accompanied by 2 guards, found Yasmina still in her cellar prison, huddled beneath her small window, watching the last remnants of the meteor shower fade in the dawn sky. She looked up as they entered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Omar approached her, his voice gentle. "The Sultan requests your presence at the palace," he said. "He knows of your skill, your knowledge. He knows the truth." Yasmina hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent her entire life hidden away, a prisoner of her father's fear and greed. The thought of leaving the cellar, of facing the outside world, filled her with both excitement and trepidation. But she knew she could not refuse the Sultan's summons. This was her chance, her opportunity to finally escape the darkness that had held her captive for so long. She followed Omar and the guards out of the cellar, blinking in the unfamiliar sunlight. As they led her through the city streets, she looked around in wonder, her eyes wide with amazement. She had only ever glimpsed the world through her small window, and now she was seeing it for the first time in all its vibrant, bustling glory. When they reached the palace, she was escorted to a large hall filled with courtiers and advisers. At the far end of the hall, seated on his throne, was the Sultan. He beckoned her forward, his gaze kind and encouraging. Yasmina approached the throne, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been in the presence of such power, such grandeur. She knelt before the Sultan, her head bowed. "Rise, Yasmina," Karim said, his voice warm and reassuring. "You have no need to kneel before me. You are a scholar, a gifted astronomer. Your knowledge is a treasure, a gift to the kingdom." Yasmina rose, her eyes meeting the Sultan's. She saw a genuine warmth in his gaze, a respect that she had never experienced before. "You predicted the meteor shower?" Karim continued. "You knew it was a harmless display, a celestial wonder, not a harbinger of doom. You knew the truth, while Jafar twisted it into a lie, using it to frighten the people and enrich himself." He turned to the assembled court. "This young woman, Yasmina, is the true astronomer behind the prediction. She is the one who possesses the knowledge, the skill, the brilliance that Jafar so falsely claimed as his own." He gestured towards Jafar, who stood guarded at the side of the hall, his face pale and drawn. "Jafar," Karim said, his voice hardening, "you stand accused not only of fraud and extortion, but also of imprisoning your own daughter, of stealing her work, of stifling her talent for your own selfish gain." Yasmina took a deep breath. She knew this was her chance to speak, to finally reveal the truth about her father's cruelty, his years of confinement, his exploitation of her talent. "It is true," she said, her voice clear and steady. "My father kept me hidden, locked, away in a cellar. He stole my work, presented it as his own, and profited from my knowledge. He told me I was cursed, a burden, a source of misfortune. But I am not cursed. I am an astronomer. I am a scholar, and I will no longer be silenced." Her words echoed through the hall, a testament to her courage and her resilience. Jafar, his face contorted in anger and shame, opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He had been exposed, his lies revealed, his treachery brought to light. Karim nodded to the guards. "Take him away," he ordered. "He will be held accountable for his crimes." As the guards led Jafar away, Yasmina stood tall, her head held high. She had finally broken free from her prison, not only the physical confinement of the cellar, but also the prison of her father's fear and control. She had spoken her truth, and in doing so, she had claimed her own destiny. The darkness that had held her captive for so long had finally been lifted, and she stood bathed in the light of truth, justice, and newfound freedom. The hall buzzed with the aftermath of Jafar's arrest. The courtiers whispered amongst themselves, their voices a mixture of shock and admiration for Yasmina's courage. Karim, still seated on his throne, watched her with a newfound respect. He rose and descended the steps, approaching her with a gentle smile. "Yasmina," he said, his voice soft but clear, "your brilliance has shone through the darkness, exposing deceit and bringing truth to light. Your kingdom owes you a debt of gratitude." He turned to address the court, his voice ringing with authority. "From this day forward, Yasmina will be recognized as the true astronomer behind the predictions. Her talent, so long suppressed, will be celebrated and nurtured." Karim then addressed Yasmina directly. "I invite you to join the royal astronomers at the Palace Observatory. Share your knowledge, explore the mysteries of the heavens, and let your brilliance illuminate the path for others." Yasmina, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her fortunes, could only nod. She had spent her life dreaming of the stars, charting their courses from the confines of her cellar prison. Now she was being offered the chance to study them from the finest observatory in the kingdom, to share her knowledge with the world, to finally live the life she had always imagined. Karim led her through the palace, the courtiers bowing respectfully as they passed. He explained the layout of the observatory, the various instruments, the ongoing research projects. Yasmina listened eagerly, her mind buzzing with excitement. They reached the observatory dome, its brass fittings gleaming in the sunlight. Karim opened the heavy door, revealing a circular chamber filled with telescopes, astrolabes, and charts of the constellations. Sunlight streamed through the open dome, illuminating the instruments and casting a warm glow on the polished floor. Yasmina stepped inside, and for the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of the sun on her skin. She had lived for 17 years in the darkness of the cellar, her only glimpse of the outside world through a small, barred window. Now, she stood in the open sunlight, bathed in its warmth and brilliance. It was a moment of profound liberation, a symbolic emergence from the shadows into the light. She looked up at the open dome, the vast expanse of the sky stretching out above her, a canvas of infinite possibilities. She felt a sense of awe, of wonder, of gratitude. She had been given a second chance, a chance to live, to learn, to explore the mysteries of the universe. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her heart, that she would not waste it. She would dedicate her life to the pursuit of knowledge, to the exploration of the heavens, to the sharing of her gifts with the world. She would make sure that no other girl would suffer the same fate she had endured. She would be a beacon of light, a testament to the power of knowledge and the resilience of the human spirit. She had stepped out of the darkness and into the light, and she would never go back. The palace observatory became Yasmina's new home. She spent her days and nights among the telescopes and star charts, her mind alight with the wonders of the universe. Karim, true to his word, encouraged her studies, providing her with access to the royal library and the wisdom of the palace astronomers. He often joined her in the observatory, their conversations ranging from the intricacies of celestial mechanics to the philosophical implications of the cosmos. He was fascinated by her quick mind, her insightful observations, her unwavering passion for the stars. She, in turn, was drawn to his genuine curiosity, his respect for knowledge, his gentle kindness. As the weeks turned into months, their shared passion for the heavens blossomed into a deeper connection. They spent countless nights together under the open dome, tracing the paths of stars, discussing the mysteries of the universe, their hands occasionally brushing as they reached for the same chart or adjusted a telescope. They learned each other's rhythms, their silences as comfortable as their conversations. They found solace in each other's company, a shared understanding that transcended the differences in their backgrounds and their stations in life. Karim, a man who had always valued knowledge above all else, found himself valuing something even more: the love of this extraordinary young woman who had emerged from the darkness to illuminate his world. He realized that her brilliance was not just in her intellect, but in her spirit, her resilience, her unwavering belief in the power of knowledge. He saw in her a kindred spirit, a partner in his quest to understand the mysteries of the universe and to improve the lives of his people. One evening, as they stood together on the observatory roof, watching the stars glitter like diamonds scattered across the velvet sky, Karim took Yasmina's hand. "Yasmina," he said, his voice soft with emotion, "you have brought light into my life, a light brighter than any star. Will you be my wife?" Yasmina, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude, nodded. "Yes, Karim," she whispered, her voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, I will." Their wedding was a grand affair, celebrated throughout the kingdom. The city, once gripped by Jafar's fear-mongering, now rejoiced in the union of their beloved sultan and the brilliant young astronomer who had exposed the charlatan's lies. Yasmina, once hidden away in a cellar, now stood beside Karim, her face radiant with joy, her eyes shining brighter than any jewel. Together, they embarked on a new chapter, not just in their lives, but in the history of the kingdom. They established a school for girls, a place where young women could learn science, mathematics, and astronomy, where their minds could be nurtured and their talents could flourish. They ensured that no other girl would suffer the fate that Yasmina had endured, that no other brilliant mind would be stifled by ignorance and prejudice. Years later, Karim and Yasmina stood hand in hand on the observatory roof, watching the stars with their children. The school they had founded was thriving, filled with young women eager to learn and explore the mysteries of the universe. Yasmina looked up at the familiar constellations, their patterns etched in her memory, and she smiled. She had come a long way from the darkness of the cellar. She had found her place in the world, a place where her knowledge was valued, her spirit was free, and her love for Karim shone brighter than any star in the sky.